as vote looms. Then Tunisia says its security forces have almost wiped out an Islamist militant group linked to Al-Qaeda during a crackdown. And the United States is holding discussions with countries in North Africa about locating drones at a base there to heighten monitoring of Islamic State in Libya. This is Network Africa. Well, you're welcome to a brand new week and a brand new episode of Network Africa on Channels Television with me, Cynthia Are. Before we look at our top story concerning what's happening in Burundi, let's take you through the top 3 stories which made headlines on the African continent over the weekend.
The Italian Coast Guard vessel Dattilo arrived in the port of Sicily's Palermo on Saturday, July 11th, carrying the bodies of 12 drowned migrants and some 717 survivors rescued from several boats in the Mediterranean on Thursday, July the 9th. According to the Italian Coast Guard, the 12 migrants died on Thursday when their overcrowded rubber dinghy sank off the coast of Libya in what was the latest episode in the Mediterranean migrant crisis. The corpses of the victims were found in the sea by the Dattilo, some 40 miles north of Libya. Then, for the 3rd time this year, prisoners have walked free from the Jawiya prison in the Libyan city of Misrata. These men spent 4 years behind bars, accused of fighting for Libya's former dictator, Muammar Gaddafi. 170 prisoners have been released since January, and another 430 remain incarcerated, the majority yet to be convicted. And following the attack at an Italian consulate in Cairo, Prime Minister Ibrahim Melib says Egypt is at war and urged the world to unite against terrorism. One person was killed after a car bomb attack claimed by Islamic State killed one person at the Italian consulate in Cairo.
Well, despite the tension in Burundi, President Nkurunziza could emerge victorious at the polls. After weeks of protests against the president's bid for a 3rd term, a general involved in a failed coup says he is mobilizing troops. Grenade attacks echo round the capital and armed clashes have erupted in the north of a nation still scarred by civil war. Opponents say another 5-year term is unconstitutional and are boycotting the July 21st vote, thereby assuring President Nkurunziza a victory. Western donors and African neighbors have also urged the president to step aside. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni will fly to Burundi tomorrow to mediate between government and opposition leaders. That was confirmed by an official, and a personal intervention underlining the scale of regional alarm over an increasingly violent standoff. We're joined on the program again by Mr. Warwick, who has been monitoring developments in Burundi as much as we have, all the way from London. Mr. Auriemma, thank you very much for your time again on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, a new date is set, July the 21st, with the president more determined than we've seen in the past 2 weeks. What happens now in Burundi?
Well, first of all, you've got to accept that the 21st is a kind of compromise, because what the African Union wanted was the presidential elections to be deferred until the 30th of July to enable the neighboring countries to intervene to achieve some sort of settlement. Nkurunziza's denying this, and he's saying we're going ahead on the 21st, which is just over a week from now. And I think you can expect to see an increase in the amount of armed insurrection that has been threatened already by certain coup members, members of the previous coup. So I think you can expect that things are going to get a lot more hazardous between now and that election.
Now, this general who's saying he's still he's looking forward to trying out another coup attempt, do you think it's going to be successful?
That's Leonard Kumana. He was involved in the previous coup, which was abortive. He seems to think that he and his colleague, Nayombare, who led the previous coup, will be more successful this time than they were the last. Only time will tell whether that is the case.
I do have to point out at this point now, Mr. Auriemma, analysts like yourself have said over and over again that the only solution to this crisis is for the president to go. Now, East African leaders met last week in Dar es Salaam, and like we said earlier on, the president of Uganda will be mediating tomorrow concerning this crisis. My question is this: do you deem it somewhat hypocritical for the East African leaders to be trying to resolve this crisis when some of them are also exceeding their own terms in office?
Well, someone like Museveni, for instance, who has accrued to himself a limitless leadership of Uganda. He's been there for 21 years, if not more. Yes, I think that the intervention of the African Union is actually undermined by the fact that so many of the leaders in Africa, and East Africa specifically, are themselves petty dictators. It rather undermines the morality of their position, if you like.
Well, Mr. Auriemma, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your input right here on Network Africa.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now, still to come on Network Africa. Tunisia says that security forces have almost wiped out an Islamist militant group linked to Al-Qaeda during a crackdown launched after 2 deadly attacks on tourists. Details when we return.